right, man. Welcome to the last Sunday night live stream we're going to do for a while. We're just putting out so much content. We need a breather, so we're going to concentrate on the well-researched shows that happen on CRROW777radio.com. I should mention, Jason will still continue to do his live stream on Wednesday nights. I think that's 9. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. But for my part, I need to just get a little bit of a breather. I've gotten to the point where I can't get away from this box. Anyhow, welcome, Jason.
And good evening, one and all.
So, couple of things going on in the world where you are. There are, pay attention to the language, twin storms headed your way.
Yeah, there sure are. I'm actually just looking at that now because I hadn't checked it for a while. But the first one, which has officially become a hurricane, is supposed to hit us tomorrow morning. So hopefully that doesn't interfere with anything we're going to do, but the power does notoriously go out in Louisiana during storms, so here's hoping everything goes well.
So we'll talk about a few things that are pressing everybody and some things that I've noticed. We're going to do it in a way where you have to put one and one together, which most adult human beings should have no problem with, if for no other reason to simply put it on the record how blatant things are getting. This week I got some notices about caching systems. A lot of websites use caching services for a number of reasons. So I get this notice, and there were 3 other notices from other services that I have, but the caching service informed me that from September 9 to, I think it's the 16th, because if I remember correctly, it was 7 days, I remember thinking, all caching will be moved from the United States for disaster preparedness, or some language to that effect, to, wait for it, Luxembourg. So one of the biggest caching places on the internet is moving all its services to Luxembourg from SEP 9 to SEP 16. I don't think people need to be told to count the ways, but there's other things I will add to that. I just want to say it kind of middle of the road, because we don't need to be flagged, and I'm not trying to be conspiratorial, but I think it's gotten to a point where things have become so blatant, because clearly the Iron Fist is the aim here. And I think the Iron Fist is an aim before we get out of December. I will not be surprised if we see some kind of a September that involves water events, like a dam or a bridge, or iron or steel, in some way like that. And time will only tell if that's a correct assessment before the fact, which is usually a pretty silly thing to do, because I don't have magic vision that lets me look into the future. But if it's correct, it's telling where we're going. And for my money, there is no way in hell we are passing the fateful day with just, normalcy. I don't think it's going to happen. But Jason and I made a decision to pull the Sunday CRROW777 live stream, not his Wednesday live stream. That'll still happen.
Yes,
absolutely. For the simple reason that, literally the way it is right now, doing that much all the time, I wake up in the morning, I go through sometimes 200 to 300 emails. I do all the website stuff. I handle everything to do with the website. I research as I can. I'm building a new website to deal with all the kind of modern problems that have crept in, even to the point where just to deliver email, it's cost me $300 a month just to deliver that silly little email that says a new episode is up, because Google will block those now. Not only will they block them, they won't inform you that they weren't delivered. They'll make it appear as if they went. It took us a long time to figure out that thousands of emails were never delivered. Right now with the website, if you try to reset your password, you'll probably never see an email. Same thing going on there. So these will be fixed with the new site. But on top of that, researching for 2 shows so that you're not saying the same thing verbatim constantly over and over. It means every night when I'm done at about 9, because I usually stay on it till about 9, I read past midnight to get my research in. So I just can't keep up at this rate anymore. But anything you want to add to that, Jason?
Right. Well, we can even explain this a little better, too. Originally, obviously, we were only doing 4 shows a month. I guess sometimes it came out to 5 if it was a longer month, right? But generally, we were doing our Thursdays shows. That was our normal releases. A couple of years ago now, because it was before I moved, let's see. Yeah, probably about 2 years ago now, the folks at TFR offered us a slot, and we took the slot, and we did it for quite a while. We did, I think, 70-some episodes, didn't we? Something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah, like quite a few. And that was our second show, so that we had an additional reach during the week. Well, that wasn't working out the best for us. The commercials were annoying. We didn't feel like we could get any headway on information whatsoever. We were always given the runaround, and we just kind of got tired of that. So we decided to start doing live streams. But then all the fun stuff started. People started drinking 6-packs of Beer Bug. That gave us 3 shows a week, and I had already started doing another live stream with Wayne McCroy. The Crow is probably on half the time, I would say, if I had to take a guess. And it was just getting to be a lot, because once the Beer Bug started, we were doing 2 full shows every week, and that's just a lot. And we're trying our damnedest to always deliver the same quality that we've always done. So that's it. It's just, I don't think we need this live stream anymore. Quite honestly, we're just always like, oh God, what day can we have a little time to ourselves? So something had to give, logically so.
We still have it, though. I mean, if we have a reason, we can always come back and do a Sunday night show if there's a specific need to do that. But the truth of it is the Thursday show is the most heavily researched usually, but this has also grown. So the Saturday show now is often every bit as important as the Thursday show. At first, when we added the Saturday show on 3/11 this year, count the ways, go ahead, count them. We decided to double our output in the face of what's going on in our world. So we added the Saturday show. So the first Saturday after 3/11, or maybe it was the second, I forget, we added that up. And what we did is we decided, well, this is a lot of content to produce, so maybe we'll just do an hour or a little over an hour, and we'll call it a 0.5 episode. You can go back through the stack and see the 0.5 episodes. That was the idea behind it. But pretty quickly, that show became as important as the Thursday show. So at this point, we've kind of committed to do what we can to deliver 8 shows a month, sometimes 9, depending on the length of things. And most other places are still charging more than we are and doing 3 or 4 shows a month. But we kind of felt like this window's open for right now, and Lord knows how long it will be open. In the long run, I think we'll probably be okay. There's going to be some Hellbent. I suspect next month we're going to see some Hellbent. But if this goes badly over the next 3 or 4 months, there's going to be a period of time where things are rotten to the core for everybody, for most everybody. And that's why we made the commitment to double our output, because what this comes down to is minds. It is always about minds. That's the only reason TV and movies exist in our world. People were once convinced it was because the box office mattered. That was never true. It was important to some people, but the underlying reason for those communication systems was mass communication, which in many movies that come to mind, they point out that they've known this since way back. What's that movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? That's portraying an early century depiction of the United States in the South. They've got a senator there that's been good old boyed in for Lord knows how long. And he shows up at a radio station. Everyone's all asking, well, aren't you going to do your politicking and shake hands and kiss babies? And he said, shut up, you idiot. We're mass communicating here. Don't you get what this means? And there's never been a time when what our world has come to be is not about shaping a mind to believe a thing, or to believe many things, or to act in a way. And that was the basic impetus behind the commitment that we made to double content output. Right.
Oh, since folks are asking, I have every intention on doing the show with James True this week. We couldn't do it last week because we had just a very typical internet outage. It was out in a whole bunch of areas here, not just my town, but all over. I actually called the company and all that, so nothing suspicious there. But that stopped me from being able to do anything, because obviously I couldn't get online. And unfortunately, my mobile signal here is total crap where we live, so I couldn't even do like audio over, what do they call it, a hotspot, which I've done before, but I haven't been able to do them since we moved to our new house, because I get like 1 to 2 bars at most, and just cannot, it's not valid. So anyway, we had to postpone that. Now, lo and behold, we've got not 1 but 2 storms coming in this week, and one of them has already become an official hurricane, and that is starting to hit tomorrow morning. hopefully nothing will do that. But the other one is coming in on Wednesday. So the power notoriously goes out in Louisiana during big storms. Knock on wood, it does not. But I'm just saying, absolutely, I have every intention. I'm not afraid of the topic that I know James wants to do. I really enjoyed meeting with him in person, and it actually really intrigued me. I thought it was very, very interesting. So I'm going to do it as long as we have the power on and internet functioning.
So I didn't take the time to... hold on, let me see if I can find it real quick. I didn't take the time to look into the storms because I'm just not interested in the news anymore. But let me see if I can find it.
What do you want to know?
The names of the storms basically...
Hurricane Marco and Tropical Storm Laura, Laura. Laura is predicted to also become a hurricane as of now once it hits landfall, so we will see.
So what was the name of the first one?
Marco, Marco.
So Mars is actually in the name, Marcos, but I think the connection there is Mars. And unless I'm mistaken, I actually saw 2 people sent me emails on this, and I had thought about it because I remember looking up the name Laura. It has something to do with winning or victory, but those are the names of the storms. Now, Jason and I are getting ready to cover what I consider to be some of the most important writing that was done in the 80s, and then quickly unpublished, if that's a thing. In other words, unavailable, pulled, literally pulled. And it's by James Shelby Downard. Here's the problem. You'll never be able to prove whether he was a real man. I suspect probably he was. There was a guy with him named Michael A. Hoffman II at the time who met him not long before his death, worked with him. Michael A. Hoffman II put out an incredible book, one of the only people to cover the fact that the Black Obelisk showed up on September 11 in Seattle. Almost nobody knows that. But he went on, Michael A. Hoffman, to drop the A and the second off his name and go into mainstream publishing and cover basically mostly about the Catholic religion. And that's a dichotomy in itself because while he's all about Catholicism, he's 100% against the Vatican. So it makes for an interesting read. But to get back to the reason I started this line, Downard, we're going to cover that. And the reason it's important, it doesn't even matter if Downard was a made-up figment of someone's imagination, is the method of toponymy, or that places matter, latitudes, longitudes, names, how they got their names, what roads connect them, what the names of those roads are, and I think it's onomology. I don't think I said that quite right, but you could look it up. That's the science of names, which is why I just went at the 2 storms that I showed you. And by the way, it's not as easy as you think. If you want to go look up Marcos and Laura and you simply open a web browser and someone tells you, oh, in the birth charts, this is what they mean, that's not good enough. You got to do real research, and you got to look it up in a few places till you begin to get satisfied with what you're being told, and then you need to switch over to etymology, and you need to track it back as far as you can to know what culture it came from, what the meanings were. Quite often they'll hide the meaning in not how it's currently understood to convey meaning, which for us, let's face it, what's that other movie, Pulp Fiction? What's your name? What does Butch mean? Listen, lady, I'm an American. Our names don't mean squat. He's talking to a lady from South America, right? There's another poke in your eye. So what will happen with etymology is you'll find 3 centuries ago, this is the derived meaning. And so that has a huge bearing. To get back to Downard, which Jason and I will cover shortly, it is bar none the most important work to show you how to understand how things work and how they were set up. And that is why it matters not whether someone can eventually show Downard existed or he didn't, or it was a fake name to protect him, or who cares. The information is valid. I've vetted it. And not only that, I've been all over the Southwest where he makes the point about the 33rd parallel. So that's coming too. But the reason I'm bringing this up now is because try to remember a kind of September when life was slow and oh so mellow. You can't do it these days. And so knowing these things that we're talking about and that names and places convey meaning and that they're casting spells in this method as we get into that non-mellow September that no one can remember, you might be keeping that in mind because you can know things beyond the shadow of doubt, you can know things. But there's all that, Jason.
And maybe we should talk about the King Kill 33 document, the one that was originally printed as a lecture in the Hoffman book. Do I have that right? Is it the Hoffman book?
See, I'm confused about that, and you've called me out on it 3 times, and I feel like I knew when I first ran into this material, which was years ago, and then I seriously went back on it maybe 2 years ago. I'm guessing something like that. About 2 years ago, I went back through the Hoffman, and ever since then, I had been going through the Michael A. Hoffman, the second material, and the Michael Hoffman Vatican material. But the Downard material, I'm not sure. I think I was under the impression at one point that it was actually published as a book, and that there was a publisher that carried it. But now all the histories say that it was like an excerpt of something, so I'm just not sure anymore, Jason.
Well, the reason why I'm bringing it up is in case someone else is familiar with it, because that's why what I keep finding is that it was part of another book that was later. That was in the initial printing. Let's make sure I get this very clear. It was in the initial printing of that book, and then it was removed and replaced with a different, whatever you want to call it, like a treatise that Downard supposedly wrote. So it's a very odd thing. And then what we find floating around seems to be slightly different versions, and some pages are different than others, right, as far as digital documents that are available. So if anybody knows anything about this is the reason why I'm bringing it up. Hey, let us know. secretsofsaturn@gmail.com, CRROW777@gmail.com. We're trying to figure this out because if it's important, which we both feel it is, there's a very good chance that things are being obscured about what the actual truth of it is.
Yeah, but don't just email a bunch of crap because you know it's Downard. We've been doing this.
We've done that.
Yeah, we've been doing this for years. If you actually know something, or you have access to old original publishing from the 80s, or things that never made it to publish. As a matter of fact, there's one book now that's on Amazon. Not too long ago, it was $400 or $500, and I kept looking at it, and it's supposed to be Downard, but it's actually a guy associated with the original publisher. I can't remember his name, Paramore? I don't know. I'm not even going to guess. But that guy had printed this thin little paperback book, which is now going for $400 or $500. One day, I logged on to Amazon, and lo and behold, it was a couple hundred. So I ordered it, and what I found is the entirety is excerpts from the older Downard material. I've read Carnival of Souls, I've read King Kill, I've read versions of King Kill, I've read King Kill 33 at different lengths, I've read the all-important Michael A. Hoffman II as the author name at that time, the black and white covered book that is showing the obelisk that showed up in Seattle 2001 September. So I've read all these things, so I'm just pointing all this out, so don't just send a bunch of crap. If you know what you found is important, or you have something that not everyone has access to, and it's about Downard, specifically James Shelby Downard, we're all interested to hear about that. But just, again, please don't start sending me PDFs, because we've got them. Hundreds. At this point, hundreds. I put out a call on my site and got overwhelmed. I think one of the followers there, Blue Lights, actually did produce one PDF that was a little bit longer than the others, but everything else was just mishmash.
And the other thing we want to know is, of course, is there more to this document? That's like the most important thing. We want to know if there's more info. The things this guy ties together are quite interesting, and kind of like a couple people we've had on, just folks who are very good at tying lines together that might seem like a little out there at first, but you're like, oh no, that actually makes way too much sense. So if you have like the original book and it's an old printing and it's different than all the PDFs out there, yeah, that's what we want to know about. Or if indeed the entire King Kill 33 document is not just a document, not just part of a write-up that was included in another book, but it was his own publications and you have it, absolutely we want that.
Yeah, anything published in the 80s with Downard, if anyone has something like that, I would even foot the bill to get it PDF'd. But I'd be surprised if anyone has it, because at the time the mindset would have been that this dude's a nutbag, because very few people would have been able to think that the apple is this rotten to the core. He's basically showing you that the entirety of the Southwest was set up by Masonic concerns, even to the point where they lost a city, went back, retook the city just so they could rename it. That's how important onomology is. And that's how important what we're talking about is to the human mind. This is how the spells are cast. This is how the human perception is manipulated. And what's ironic is all these things happen in the world, and people say that doesn't seem right, but they don't know enough about the history of the place, how it came to be, what it was called originally, what road used to be there that was named this. It's real difficult research to know at that level. But once you do, and you've grown up enough, there's no putting the horse back in the barn. There's no denying what's gone on. The problem is that in the 80s, I would imagine less than 1% of suspicious people would have thought that that was anything but conspiracy nonsense. But now, not so much. But even now, it is at such a level of depth that it'll still blow minds. Every time I comment on Kennedy, by the way, I get 1,000 emails. What do you mean this or that? And I'm not playing this game anymore. If you want to know something, go take a damn look. I told you the truth to the best of my ability. If you can prove me wrong, do it. But I'm reasonably sure you cannot prove me wrong. That was a put up. And that's the example we're going to lift from the Southwest, from the creation of Texas, with the Downard method. That's one of the things we'll be presenting. It's just a lot of work to do it.
Yeah, it sure is. All right, so that takes care of that aspect of it. Do we want to talk about a very requested guest that is finally going to be coming on with us?
I must be old and I can't remember Woodstock. What are you referring to?
The person we're supposed to be recording with tomorrow.
Oh, go ahead. Talk. That's another thing. In the history of since I've been CRROW777, in a public position online, kind of unintentionally at first, but it's grown. I haven't had famous people on for the most part. There's been a couple exceptions, but go ahead. We're going to make an exception now.
We are, and with very good reason. We are going to be recording with, as long as nothing bad happens with these stupid storms, with the one and only Mark Passio. And we are going to be discussing the trivium and the quadrivium, and then take that into the natural law that he is oh so good at. And CRROW isn't really all that familiar with his material, so this is great. This is going to be a very interesting conversation. I think he's going to really like a lot of what Mark has to say.
Yeah, I don't surf the web. I'm too busy doing my own stuff, and I made a commitment a long time ago that I wanted to have my own thoughts, and I got tired of sifting through noise on the internet. So I went back to where I came from, books. There's no arguing with the book. It is what it is. Either it is or it isn't. And that's where I've pretty much remained. But we'll have Mark on because for me to do the trivium and the quadrivium at any level, I'm very familiar with them, but not familiar to the level that I would have to be for all the people that are now pulling their children out of school, homeschooling, asking about a classic education. To the point where when we start to tell them about the 7 liberal arts, their eyes glaze over because they think the word liberal means what it means to us now, not understanding that the word liberal was not a political football when the classic educations were purveyed. So we're going to cover the quadrivium and the trivium and things that are ancillarily directly connected to it, or basically, to put it simply, tied to nature, where there is no lie, for the simple fact that a lot of people are now interested in their children getting educations that matter, that are provable. You can walk out the door into nature and show that this is real, this mattered. It's a bit like the Hermetic ideas. They've been so beat around that you'll talk about it to one person, will say, oh, that's the devil, and another person will say, oh, that's silly, and another person will say, oh, yeah, I'm all about that. But the truth is, the actual truth, when you throw aside all the defaming and political nonsense that's been done with these ideas, is those 7 principles are provable. They're the foundation for everything, and they always were up into the modern age. And so that's why it's critically important to get back to these things. We live in a time where everyone's been taught to think very black and white. I can't tell you how many emails I get in a year where someone watches 100 shows, and then one show I say something that doesn't resonate with them, and they're all, that's it, you said this thing, and I'm out the door. And I'm just like, really, in this day and age, that's, you're going to take the baby, the bathwater, and the tub, and the faucet that drew the water, you're going to throw it all out the window. But that's kind of what we're up against these days.
Well, unfortunately, there's a big line that gets drawn between people who are very hardcore, kind of mainstreamy Christian, and then those who are absolutely opposed to it. And both of them kind of do the same nonsense. That if you cover something that a Christian thinks is dark, evil, satanic, and the more nutty they are about it, the worse they are about it. Like people saying that the mandala I have that's from India for meditation behind me is of the devil. I mean, that's just ridiculous. That just shows you don't know anything about culture. And then there's the other side that, oh, you mentioned Jesus, done, can't look at this material, absolutely must be garbage, pointless, worthless, I don't, mind closed, done. And you know what? That's not the way to be, folks.
Well, that was the design. That was the same as the red and blue political thing. That was by design.
You're falling
to
for
divide, and shut it down. You know, here's the actual truth, and this is irony at the highest level. When I was young in Southern California in the end of the 70s and the 80s, we smoked a lot of pot, and we used to play this game called, we used to play this game called Stoner TV. The whole premise of Stoner TV was to sit down, do way too many bongs, although that's laughable now because the pot people smoke now is like rocket fuel compared to that. But we'd sit down, do a ton of bongs, turn on the television, turn off the sound, and we'd put on this record. And to this day, I remember the opening lines. Everything you know is wrong. Dogs fly spaceships, and he choked to death on a piece of cheese. Now, this all sounds pretty ridiculous and pointless, but what would happen as you watch Stoner TV is eventually the TV syncs up, and it looks like what's going on the TV and what people are saying are matching the record. But here's the irony. When I finally grew up, and I was thinking one day about that, I realized that comedy, ridiculous, silly record was telling the truth in the opening line. Everything you know is wrong. And it's true. It is provably true. Until you hit the point where you realize what this place is and you throw everything you know out the damn window and start over from square one, everything you know is wrong. And the things that you don't know that are wrong, that just happen to be right, it's by coincidence at best. And by the way, I don't believe in coincidence. And that's the truth of it. And that is all encompassing. Our religions have been given to us by corporations. Every one of those corporations got their material originally from the Vatican, which is the actual definition, verbatim, of what the Antichrist would be from the surface narrative of the Bible. Your political life was brought to you in a tin can that had rotten beans from the day it was put together. I can point you right now to a speech in 1924 where the governor of the Central Bank of England is telling every banker in America, we got our political parties, now we can make everyone waste their time fighting about junk that doesn't matter so we can take over the world with banks. And all this was knowable all along, except there was a mindset once upon a time that we're proud of this country. It's something different. And it was true to a level. And we trust the people that are here to take care of us and run government. And, you know, if you go out into the world today and you ask those same questions to those same people, are you proud of America? How many people are going to say yes? Or do you trust the people running this joint? So now we're to it. Now we're to the point where we got to face, do dogs fly spaceships? I mean, really, sounds like a silly thing to think about, but everything you know is wrong. So what is right? If everything you know is wrong, then that means anything is possible. Literally. You got to start over. Is 1 and 1 2? No, it's not. Let me see. Here's one finger. Here's one. Yes, 1 and 1 is 2, but I just realized something else I was never told. 1 and 1 is also 11. And by the way, 11 is also 2. Are you following what I'm getting at here? So that's where we are now. And the whole game that we're up against is human minds that have been beaten, common sense beaten right out of them. And common sense to a lot of minds looks like conspiracy at this point. And that's the game. And by the way, you're probably going to see why this matters in 30 days or less, if I had to guess. And I am guessing. But
I saw someone say they would like to see Clint Richardson come back on with us, and that's always possible if there's a topic there for us to discuss. He's very knowledgeable, of course.
He is very knowledgeable. What we did with the law type ideas is we realized that nobody agrees on anything, and we've started to realize that there's Lord knows how many jurisdictions, there's Lord knows how many ways to go at it. We're thinking about the family court system now, which is a whole other beast. that affects so many lives in such a negative way. So we're trying to queue up for that. But the first time we had Clint on, I can't say what he told you was wrong, but what I can tell you is none of us can live that way. And so that became problematic. Here's a man telling you the truth about the system we exist in, and that if you don't like what's being done to you, you have to go live in the dirt somewhere and never use another system. Logically, what he's telling you is true, but is there anyone listening who can do it? So for me, I had to keep looking because I can't live that way, and I don't want to be treated this way. And so we'll continue on with the Law series, and yes, we may well have Clint. His breadth of knowledge is staggering.
I see people asking me about Michael Tessarian and also about Santos Bonacci again. For the umpteenth time, this keeps coming up, and I'm just going to explain why we don't have big names on or certain people. It's not because we don't like their work or respect their work. A lot of these people do amazing work, and they put out tons of it. Most of the big names that are out there don't have conversations. They lecture. I had Santos on, for instance, and he's fantastic. I really like the guy. But I barely got a word edgewise for almost 2 hours. He lectures, and that's just it. Like, he knows his info, he knows what he wants to deliver, but that's not the show that Crow and I put on. We have conversations with very knowledgeable people because Crow and I are also very knowledgeable people. We like to pass the baton around. As a matter of fact, you'll notice that sometimes I don't even get in sometimes, depending upon who's on, because Crow likes to talk a lot, and if it's with another guest that likes to talk a lot, I'm literally getting a crowbar just to get a word in on a show that I'm part of. So that's just it. We're not going to have people on that it's literally we're screaming at them. It's like, hey, man, have a conversation.
Well, there's also more. Most people may not realize that in all the content we produce at this point, 80% of the game is how do you deliver what we're about to do so that the most minds can at least consider it. At least that's the bar, that's the level of the bar. What do we got to do to say the correct words to consider it? And what you'll find with a lot of the big names is they presented their material so many times that they're not taking into account that people may not be familiar with the foundations of the things they're saying. And that's another reason that we do the show the way we do. If I'm listening to a guest we have on and I'm thinking if I was in the audience I wouldn't understand, I stop it right there and I try to clarify in some meaningful way. As a matter of fact, I probably got, I don't know, something like 20 or 30 emails from the last episode up because I'm so rude that I interrupted the guest. It was the first time we had him on, and as he launched in, he wasn't used. I don't know if he's been interviewed before, but there was no break for me to jump in, so I had no choice to either shut up or jump in, and I chose to jump in. But the point is, these things are for a reason, and even if it doesn't seem like it, like at one point I interrupted our last guest to point out that the people in these municipal governments are corporations. They don't know it. They've been trained to do it the way they've been doing it, and I broke in just to point that out because it's important. You can't hate on those people as if they're the Grinch who stole Christmas, and they may well be stealing Christmas, but they don't know it. And if you forget that, then you're losing the thread. What do you want to do here? Kill the horse pulling the cart or deal with the nonsense in the cart, you know? And so the way we do the show, I'm just saying, the language we try to use and the way we try to come at it is so that the most people can consider what's being laid down, because that's the whole game. The whole game in this world right now and for the foreseeable future is what does a mind believe in? What does a mind accept? What will a mind do? Beyond that, not a damn thing in this existence matters, because we're under full frontal right now. And the whole game, there is no more bombs and bullets nonsense to take over the world. This is war in the 21st century. It's about your mind with technology. So that's the whole game, and that's why we do it the way we do it. And that Jason often tried to get big names on when we were first together, and I know he got frustrated a lot of times because I didn't want to do it. But there's the where and why.
Right, and I totally get it. Of course, I was more concerned about, not more concerned, but I was concerned at the same time as what we were doing to reach other audiences. But we have our own audience now. It just took a few years, but we are respected names in our own right, I guess you could say. And we don't need to necessarily go after people who have these really big names now. And quite honestly, those big names, they're the ones that are going on coast to coast regularly and getting on places that have zillions of viewers and all that. So it's not like they need us, to be honest with you.
Well, there's another good example. I went on coast to coast. I didn't really want to, but I did. And if you go to CRROW777 Radio as a member, or you go to coast, you can hear it. But compare that conversation that I had with George Norrie to a normal CRROW777 show, and you will understand a lot about what we're trying to do. Luckily, Norrie was cool. He knew what was going on, and he also knew how far I would go. So it went just right down the road. But literally, go listen to CRROW777 on coast to coast. I think it was like 3 o'clock in the morning or something. Way too late for me, so I wasn't even on the top of my game because I don't do late night anymore. I used up all my nights in the 80s. Yeah, but
too much
go
stoner
listen
TV.
to that. Yeah, go listen to that and concentrate to what's being delivered and how it's being delivered, and then compare it to a CRROW777 show, and you'll understand a lot more about why we do what we do. Well,
to be honest with you, it was about as milquetoast as I've ever heard you ever, because it had to be. George Norrie was not very familiar with the material, just a cursory, oh, okay, lunar wave, gotcha. And George was very polite. He did ask some good questions, but it was literally 101 first day of school kind of stuff. It's just like, our listeners don't need to hear that. Now, did we reach other minds that got interested? I don't know. Back in the day, the reason why I used to nag Crow about going on coast to coast is because back in the day when I was listening to it years ago, I remembered all of the guests that would come on say that was like their big thing to get a huge push, because there were so many, literally millions and millions of people listening to that show. And I don't know what their audience is anymore, but the push that I know people used to get way back in the day didn't happen with us at all. And Crow was on for 2 hours. And if you want to hear it, it's great. I mean, it's cool. And I cut all the commercials out, and Crow's got it uploaded up on the main website, so members can go and listen to it if you haven't. But it really just didn't serve anything for our actual listeners. It was just more like, oh, cool, Crow's on with George Norrie. I mean, maybe if it was Art Bell back in the day, it may have been a little more interesting and exciting because Art asked really good questions. But, yeah, it seems like those days are gone. This podcasting format is the way forward, it does seem. You can do your own thing, and you can literally reach as many people as decide to tune in.
Yeah, and there's another thing going on there too, which is why I agreed to do it. Norrie's polite. I said a lot of things. As a matter of fact, you'll find that in one part of the interview, he traps his own self because we've established through the conversation that you can't trust certain sources, and it comes back around to space, and he says, well, I know this astronaut, so I have to trust him. But as he says it, he cuts himself off because he realizes we've already established that these are not trustable sources. But at the end of the day, therein, Mr. Norrie teaches more people. I don't really agree with Coast to Coast. I don't think it's that helpful anymore. But the way he's interviewing is a lesson to all these other, private channels. Be polite. Don't be a dick. Yeah. Even if someone says something you don't like, don't make an issue of it. If it's something heinous that you feel like you need to correct, politely correct it. That's like the majority of the game here. If people say bad things about you, ignore it. It will go away, and they will reap what they sow. But I think the Norrie thing, just to understand the way we normally do a thing, and then to see on the big mainstream world the way that things have to be done. I went as far as I could. If I would have took one step further than saying JFK was fake, the bottom would have fell out, but it didn't fall out.
Well, I think Art Bell was just a much more interesting talk show host. He was good. He had a good voice too, just a pleasant voice to listen to. So if you really want someone to use as a template to learn from, I think Art Bell is probably the best out there with this kind of material. But he is sadly gone. But there's tons of information out there of his that you could go listen to if you wanted, and that's who I like. I don't think I emulate him in any way, shape, or form, but the way he approaches things, that calm politeness with interest to the guest, no matter how the credibility might be a little stretched, you still got to give them the benefit of the doubt. And Crow and I have had a few of those, even though we try our best to vet people too. And sometimes it happens. Sometimes you get some interesting people on, quote unquote interesting.
Most people have forgotten what happened to me when I was doing the telescope things, and I don't really talk about it because it's not important, but the same thing was going on where all these big shows were trying to get me, the lunar wave and actually other things that I had shot. And so I went on ground zero, which I didn't really want to do, but I did it anyhow. And it was an eye-opener because I knew what it was. And what was funny is everything I said about the moon, we would go to a break, the producers would look up, by the way, what's the name of the gal that's no longer with us that was the producer that got me on that show?
Tracy Twyman.
Tracy Twyman, who I'd never met, was the producer who forced me on because it was untopical for the night that it was coming up, but she was aware of what I had done. So she gets me in there. As we go to break, all the producers would look up everything I've said. When we came back on, Clive Lewis would regurgitate it and say it as if they were his thoughts. And not
doesn't
only
that just sound like mainstream though? Like doesn't that sound mainstreamy beyond all belief?
It gets worse. When the call-ins happened, it was all staged. It was like Gilligan's Island, the call-ins. And you can go back, but then to top it off, the name of the episode gets named after demons, which I won't even repeat the names because I like to live in the sunshine, and I don't see a reason to even imply that a darkness like that exists. But he puts CRROW777 up because he knows people are going to make the mistake of associating it with Crowley, and then he names the episode after two demons. And I won't even tell you what those demons are responsible for. That's the experience of mainstream. But on the back of that, and Jason and I were just talking about this, the Prometheus people from Hollywood who make things like Ancient Aliens, I think, they try to come get me. And they try to get my footage. I say no. Then they later try to get me to do some other things. Then eventually I get an offer that if I'll come up to Hollywood and do a screen test from San Diego, I'm living in San Diego at the time. And by the way, I've already told him at this point, I said, show me your contract. The first time I read the contract, I said, you guys are freaking high. Are you smoking crack? I said, any serious researcher will never sign a contract like this. And
we're looking at you, David Wilcock.
Well, they said to me, you'd be surprised who would sign it. And I said to them, the hell I would. Because anyone who would sign that is a sellout, not worth his weight to be called a researcher. But anyhow, so after that all happens, and there were two contracts I looked at, and I spit on both of them in public. And then I put it on my channel at the time to let people know I would never sell my soul for a paycheck. They offer me to come up to do a screen test in Hollywood, and if everything goes well, they'll give me my own show, which is, I assume, was UFO-y, and they were still trying to get at my footage and the lunar wave and everything. And I said, you people are high. I've seen your contracts, and hell could not freeze over cold enough for me to even hold that piece of paper in my hand. Never happened. But this is how far we've tried to keep what we do from the glint of popularity or mainstream.
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing I've always wanted to do with Crow is a TV show of some sort, or not a TV show that will be on a network, but like shoot our own. And I have all the stuff to do it, and I know how to do it now, especially after doing the film. And maybe that's something we can get around to doing at some point. Crow's shooting new footage and all that kind of stuff. I think that would be really, that'd be really something, especially if he's capturing cool stuff again, right?
Well, there's actually another side to this, and luckily I had been awake for quite some time by the time I dealt with it, and I already knew what they were about, and that they lived in a place that I would never live or even travel, to make a pun. But they offered me money for footage, and what was ironic is they didn't go for the lunar wave footage first. They went for these other things, like when I had those ghost things going all around the moon, and when the moon blinked, and some other footage that wasn't like the most popular online. And so they make me this offer of something like 45 or 50 bucks a second. But I'm looking, so I said, show me your effed up contracts again. And I said, by the way, I won't sign your contract. If I decide to do this, I'll write my own agreement with you. You will not hand me one of your lawyer happy Hollywood nonsense pieces of paper. Not happening. So I look at what they say. It's like 45 or 50 bucks a second. But as I read through what they had written, and by the way, I'd come out of the corporate world. I'd written my own contracts before. I'd dealt with stuff like that. So I wasn't blind completely to it. I realized what they were doing. They would go to footage that may have taken me months and months to capture and that took me 15 seconds to film. After all that time of trying to film something, they would pay me 45 or 50 bucks a second for something like a 5 or a 10-second clip, and then they would use it over and over and over to the end of time, as was written in the contract. So to poke them in the eye, to let them know I wasn't an idiot, I said I'd be happy to let you run my footage. I'll even let you run the lunar wave, but I'll be writing the agreement, and it'll cost you $100 a second, and you can use it once. And they ran, because I knew their little game. I knew
Did they tell you no on the spot? Because I don't think we ever really talked about it in this detail. Or did they say, we'll get back to you?
The producer says I'm not authorized to make decisions like that and this, that, and the other thing. And so I wasn't.
What kind of producer are you then?
Yeah, I said, I know what you're doing. I'll wake up 5 years from now and you'll still be running that footage you gave me $200 for in some other show.
Exactly.
And you'll play it 10 times during the half hour. So it was like.
Oh, it was Prometheus. People are asking who did it. It was Prometheus Entertainment was the big one, right?
There were three, but Prometheus is the only one I can remember the name of. I don't even remember what order.
One of them was whoever does Ancient Aliens, though, right? Because that's what they wanted to kind of tie it to.
No, I'm pretty sure that's Prometheus, but what I don't recall was, I think it was like 4 or 5 times this went on. First time was for footage, and then it progressed. Then it was for a show. Then it was for a guest spot on one of their. We run around and look at crazy life. And the funny thing was, during this conversation, I said, the other thing is, I don't respect you guys. Here I am busting my ass in my backyard, and every piece of footage that I post to YouTube is better than what you're running on TV, and we both know it. And he said, that's why I'm calling you. So that was the whole deal, because they were trying to hook minds into their UFO nonsense, and their footage wasn't good enough. They're still using footage from like the 80s.
You know, which is really surprising to me, why no one has tried to license Shoot the Moon. That's pretty much all of the best stuff you ever did over that 4 to 5 year period, and we've never heard a peep from anybody. Even Gaia keeps thumbing their nose at us. Gaia.tv, which I thought would be all over that, and they don't give a flip.
They got afraid.
Huh?
They got afraid talking with that guy. And by the way, you can see, they want to run the third eye blind yoga stuff and other things like that. They didn't want to get too close to someone trying to say what they feel is true. I think that guy got spooked.
Well, it wasn't him. He bumped it up to the next level, and I don't remember her name now. I remember she had an Asian name, and I've tried to get back to them, and they just kept blowing me off. So I was like, okay, what we have is better than just about all the other crap that you've got on there, especially liars like David Wilcock and whatever the other dude he's always hanging out with is, all their blue alien chicken people crap. It's like you'd rather talk about chicken people than 2 hours of amazing footage with a learned individual. Okay, have fun with that.
The first time I said, show me your contract, and I read that, which I knew I wasn't going, because I'd just come out of the corporate world before I started, so I'd seen how atrocious but get this. Some of the stuff in that contract, and that was not even the main contract to make a deal for the show. That was the we're planning to do a show contract. Here's some of the things. We can do a background investigation on anyone in your family or anyone you've ever worked with or anyone you know. I'm not kidding.
Pay attention, people, because he told me this yesterday, and I didn't even have this detailed of a conversation with him in all the years we've been friends. This is how the mainstream bullshit works. Listen to what he's going to tell you now.
So they can access any records from school to military to any job you've had. They can access your payment records. They can access your tax records. They can access your arrest records if you have any or anything like that. And this contract, which by the way was something like, I don't know, 40 pages. I don't know. It was a lot of pages, and all in legalese. But I dealt enough with it that I got the gist of what they were doing. And I didn't even finish the contract. And I said, and that's when I told the dude, you're high, man. You must smoke crack. I told him I'm a real researcher, and no real researcher would ever consider signing this. He's all, you'd be surprised. I said, no, I won't, because a real researcher never. In other words, anyone who ever signed that for Prometheus or anyone else is a sellout. They went to the crossroad. They're not interested in research. They're doing something else. Read the contract, and you can't deny it.
Well, the one thing I found out in the years since, that a lot of these companies are hurting, and they're struggling to make the kind of money that they used to. So I guess they can't have 7 cocaine parties a week. Now they can only have 5. So a lot of times what they do is, from what I've read, is you have to have a finished or near finished product that they can literally just jump all over, rub their spooge all over it to polish it up, and out it goes. But a lot of people just aren't capable of delivering that kind of material. So,
well, you have to give away your life.
But either way, they want you to do the work. They want you to pay for it, and then they just want to license it from you, shine it up a little bit, and put it out there and make all the money.
Well, they want to rip you off so that they can use it in perpetuity. But the other part of this, so this must have been like getting to be towards the end of 2014, if I had to guess. So meanwhile, you know, the companies that do your ads on YouTube, there'd been one after me for a year. So finally, when all this happens, this is like in 2013, I'm starting to realize that the biggest concern for online is going to be free speech. So if you go to my website and read the About page, that was written in 2013, just to prove the point. So the About page is all about free speech. I realized in 2013 the biggest problem with what was about to happen. So I go to this third-party company, which to this day runs my ads, and I said this to them. I said, I'll come on, and I'll be your little partner, or whatever you call it, on 2 conditions. And I'm talking to the CEO. The CEO has been calling me for a year, trying to get me to make this deal. And I said, I will write our agreement, or no, you'll give me your agreement, and I will write it till I'm satisfied with it, and that will be our agreement. And the other thing is you have to protect me from Google. And he agreed to both. And so to this day, to this day, when they deleted my YouTube channel in the fall of 2017, I know for a fact that company and the CEO, who's embedded in Hollywood, he comes from the TV movie world, because that's what those ad purveyors are all about, making like stars out of YouTube people. That's what they were hoping for me. They just didn't realize who I was. But I know he goes to bat, and me and Jason see these emails that get sent back from Google saying CRROW777 has crossed the zero tolerance policy for hate speech. So at that point, we have the document in our hand, and I'm getting ready to go to court, which I would never do, because you can look through thousands of hours of me online. You will not find hate speech in anything I've ever done. But lo and behold, 3 weeks later, my channel comes back. So it could be. He won't admit it to this day, and I haven't talked to him for years now, to be fair, but it could be that he actually did protect me from Google. Not sure to this day why the channel came back.
Well, we're just about out of time, so the next 2 shows we have lined up on CRROW777 Radio, as long as everything goes well tomorrow, the Thursday release will be the Mark Passio episode. And again, that is going to be on the Trivium, the Quadrivium, and then some natural law. As long as that goes off well, that will be the Thursday release. The Saturday release will be with one of the 2 Australian folks, Daryl O'Brien. Came back with us, and we had a very interesting conversation with him the other night. So
Unreal.
Yeah, right. And he definitely told us just how bad things really are there. Like the things that we were talking about when we were reading articles, that is actually what's going on. And I've also had some listeners message me too as well, confirming that, that they're literally living under medical tyranny, if you want to call it that. I mean, this is Gestapo level insanity. And from what I understand, New Zealand is starting that crap up too. So I feel for you folks over there, because holy shit.
Byzantine and Draconian are not really covering what we got. But what's more, the Saturday show that we run this week with Daryl, he tells you who's holding the paper at the top. He's telling you the corporation at the very top. We're getting into things that'll make your head spin, to include, and I know there's going to be a lot of people interested in this, and I don't care if you're not Christian. You can be on whatever spiritual path you want, but the foundation for the Western world is built on the Bible. That's all there is to it. All of our law, all of our corporate, all of it. There is a new group that is trying to translate the original scriptures back to what the Vatican changed the wording, hid things, removed things, back to its original meaning to include the old mystic Jewish writings that would be found or associated with the Old Testament. That's called Sefer, by the way, if people want to look it up. I ordered one the same night. I'll bet you Wayne McCroy's already ordered one. A few people who follow me have already ponied up $300 to get everything. I got the lexicon and the Sefer, but that one episode, I don't know what will happen with Passio because I've only met him once for just a few minutes and I've never really heard too much of his content, but I'm guessing it will be good and I'm guessing it will be important because these are the foundations for reality. In the same way, the thing everyone likes to argue about called hermetics, those principles, they're undeniable to a common sense mind and they're provable in the natural world where there is no lie. And so with Passio, that will be foundational to the books we're going to cover that were included in a classic education as late as the late 1800s, early 1900s. Anyone who is educated still got this content. But there it is. Anything else, Jason?
Oh, we should mention that Kurt Kallenbach will also be coming up in the very near future.
Kurt Kallenbach. So we just did another law series, and Kurt contacted Rose the same day. So yes, we will have Kurt Kallenbach back, and we're not done with the law. I don't feel like we're quite
not
there.
By a long shot.
No, it's pretty clear that we're going to have to try to take a closer look at family law because so many lives have been torn asunder in that corporate scheme. And these things are not a joke. And in closing, I'll say this. Don't mess around with the law. It is better to be under the system than eaten by the system. So don't just go out and do things because you're tired of the way things are. If you're going to do a thing, understand how and why you're going to do it and what the outcome you're wanting is. Other than that, leave it the hell alone. I can't tell you the number of emails I've gotten in the last 3 weeks of people who went and screwed around in a courtroom and got their ass handed to them like a hat, and in terrible ways. I'm not even going to talk about it. So there it is. Just, we're going to keep covering these things, but use common sense, man. If you don't know what you're doing, don't put your hand on the hot stove because it's going to burn your damn hand down to a stub. And I've got emails to prove that's what law is about. Anyhow, I want to wish you all a happy, healthy, higher-minded year ahead. Thank you so much for showing up on the Sunday nights. From time to time, we'll do more Sunday nights, but we're going to hold up our end on Thursdays and Saturdays. There it is, man. Cheers.
Belief is the enemy of knowing.